Hey guys, thanks for coming to part 2 of the tutorial series. For this we'll be creating our first scene and I thought it'd be fun to do some physics simulation. So we're going to simulate a bowling ball hitting some bowling pins. So let's get started. First we'll create a plane and we'll call it the lane. It will be the lane that the bowling ball will roll down, and then we'll go over here, hold left click and create a sphere. So we'll drag this up. And I'm going to show you just how quickly you can get some physics simulation going here. So first let's click the lane and we'll go to tags and we'll go to simulation tags and you'll see there's a few different options. We'll go to collider body. This is going to be for our floor. Then we'll click our sphere. We'll go to tags, simulation tags, and we're going to make this a rigid body. So now if we click play, we'll see our sphere falls and hits the plane. That easy. And it's kind of cool. You can see if we click on the plane, we can actually rotate it and do some kind of real-time physics simulation. So let's set that back to 0. I'm going to change the name of sphere to bowling ball. And I'm going to go to the object attributes and just kind of double the segment so it's a little more round. Depending on how powerful your computer is, you don't want to raise this up too high because you'll see that as we raise this up, we're getting more and more points, more vertices on this thing, and it's a lot more to calculate for the physics simulation. So it shouldn't be too bad to leave it at 50 or anything, but I'll just leave it at 32 and set this back. Something else to check out, there's other simulation tags, and we could see soft body, for example. If we click play, now our ball is going to get mushy. So there's fun things to check out there, but I'm just going to undo and I'll just go back and I'll actually just set this back to rigid body. Cool. So let's expand this lane and make it longer so the ball can roll down it. So we'll just go to width and let's set that to 2000. Cool. Now let's take the bowling ball and let's move it to the end over here. We can lower that down a bit like that. Awesome. So now what we're going to do is we want this bowling ball, instead of just sitting here on the end, we want it to roll down the lane. So to do that, there's a couple different ways to do it, but the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to create a cube, and I'm going to have this cube go behind the ball, and I'm going to animate it so it hits the ball and sends it forward. So I'll start with the cube right here, and I'm going to go to frame 0 and I'll make a keyframe. And then I'm going to go to, let's try frame 5, and I'm going to animate this cube forward so it's going to hit that bowling ball. So now if we go back to 0 and we click play, oh, nothing happens. And that's because this cube, we'll call it collider, that needs also a simulation tag. It needs to be, we'll make it a collider body. So now if we click play, boom, our bowling ball goes rolling forward. And we don't really want to see this. We want it to look like it's just rolling on its own. So what we'll do is we'll alt left click these circles so it's hidden. And even though it's hidden, it's still, the physics simulation will still be applied. Cool. So that's all good. And now we need some bowling pins for the ball to run into. So we're going to try a modeling trick to help us create a pin. So what I'm going to do is I downloaded an image from Google. I just Googled bowling pin and I just downloaded the first image I saw. And what I just created was a plane, and we're going to put that image on this plane. So I want to rotate this plane 90 degrees. If you hold shift while you rotate, it'll actually snap. And you can snap it to 90. And let's drag this over here to the end. And we're going to create a material to apply that bowling pin image to. So if I go here and I click plus, I create a new material and I double click that. I'll turn off reflectance because all we need is color. And we've seen in the other video that you can change the color of the cube with these options up here, but what we actually want to do is change the texture. So if we click these three dots here, we can click on our image and open that. And now our material has this image applied rather than a color. So we can take this image and drag it onto our plane here, or we can drag it onto the plane object here. We don't need two of these, so I'm going to delete that. And you can see our material is now applied, and here it is. But it looks like it's a little compressed, so we want to shape this a bit. So what we're going to do is change the height of this plane till it looks like a bowling pin. And we want to make sure it's not too big. We want it to look around the right size. So maybe something more like that. That looks good. So we're going to essentially now model something in front of this plane and try and get it to the shape to look like this image. So I'll rename this to bowling pin image. It's good to name things here so they're not all just named cube 1, cube 2. It helps you keep track of what's going on. Okay, so for this bowling pin, I'm going to create a primitive and we're just going to reshape it to kind of match that image. So I'm going to create a capsule. So if we take our capsule and we drag it over here, we can kind of line it up. So this is when it becomes useful to use these active views over here. You can change the display. Whoops. You can change the display from lines as usually the default, and you can change it to Gorad shading. So now we can see our cube like straight on from this viewpoint. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to line this up as best we can, and we're going to change some of these capsule parameters. So let's make it a little taller. Change the height to a little more, maybe 350. And we want that to line up about there. That looks good. And what we're gonna, actually let's do 375. We'll do 375. So let's go to Gorad shading lines. So we can see that our capsule is not made out of doesn't have many cuts in it here. And we're going to be shaping this to try and match this curvy look of the pin. So we want to add more height segments in. So let's up the amount of height segments to, let's say, 12. And let's up the cap segments too to make it a little rounder on top. Let's do 8. All right, that looks like it's something good to work with. And we can't edit this capsule until we click Make Editable. So we have to make sure these are good before we click that. But it looks good, so we'll make this editable. You can also click C on the object. And now we're ready to make some changes to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is we want this bottom to be flat because we're going to add physics simulation like we did to the bowling ball so that this will rest on the ground, on the lane. And we want it to have a flat bottom because if it's round, it'll fall down. It won't be like a bowling pin. So let's start by editing the bottom. So we're going to just go back to this front view and we're going to select all these vertices here and we're going to delete them. And now we have a flat bottom. So the thing is that now we have, here, let's hide this lane so that we can see this better. So now we can see that we have a big fat hole in the bottom here, which we don't want. We want that to be closed. And we can use our handy dandy close polygon tool over here to fill in that hole. And that can also be found if you go to Mesh, add close polygon hole. There's lots and lots of tools up here that are useful, which we'll probably look into more of those in a bit. So cool, now we have a flat bottom there. And now we're going to start modeling and shaping this capsule. So let's do one layer at a time. So from this perspective, it's very easy to select this row of points. Sometimes from this perspective, you can like accidentally select some from, from the other side without realizing it. So it's really useful to use this modeling method. So let's go ahead and we're going to scale this down. So you can see it changing over here, and we're just trying to match this image best we can. So we're just going to kind of do that and work our way up. We'll scale this down a bit. Then we'll move up here. Maybe we'll scale that out a tiny bit. And we'll just keep working our way up until this capsule has become the shape we want it. So keep going, scale that up. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can always take a look at the end and change things as you need to. We'll shrink this down a bit. Shrink that. Looking good. Let's scale that down. That looks good there. Next is this one. All right. And it might be tempting to try to just grab all of them and scale, but you'll notice that it'll kind of create this big gap here. And that's because it's looking at the center of all the selected vertices rather than just one line here. So that can be useful sometimes, but we're gonna just stick to our method for now and just work our way up. So now we're getting close. All right. Maybe we'll try that for these ones. Shrink that down a bit. All right, let's see. Let's see how that looks. Maybe a little bit square up here. So let's try to maybe we'll shrink this in a little bit. And let's turn on Gorat shading and take a look. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That is not bad. Not bad at all. Awesome. So now let's take a look with our lane on. And let's go ahead and apply our physics tag to this. You can actually, instead of going to tag, simulation, rigid body, you can just select this rigid body, and if you control drag it to the console, you can kind of copy and paste tags. But you can do it however you like. We're going to rename this capsule. Let's call it pin 1 because we plan on throwing a couple more in here. We can drag this closer to the ground, but make it above the ground so it's not falling through it. And now if we click play, boom, we knocked over a pin. Pretty cool. So we want to create a couple more pins to make this more interesting, but before we do that, let's color this pin to match that image so we don't have to do it for all of them. We can just do it on this one and then duplicate. So Let's create a material for the pin. So if we click this plus, we see that in the image it's kind of glossy, it's kind of shiny. So let's match that. So if we double click on the material, we can set our color, and our color, make it a little more white. And then we can go to reflectance, and we want to add a little bit more shininess to it. So we can go to add, we'll do Beckman, and right now it's kind of metallic. If we drag down this layer, it's going to bring out more of the color that we have over up here, more of that white. So we'll drag that down a bit. Let's just do 25, and we can up the roughness a little bit if we want. Maybe down on the reflection strength a little bit. And let's apply that. So we can just drag that onto our object, and boom, we got a shiny material. Now we want to add those red stripes in. So instead of doing all that again, we can click on this material, control drag to duplicate it, and now let's just go to color and change it to red. So now you got a red material. But if we drag it on here, it's just going to make the whole thing red. We want to just get those stripes in. So how we can do that is we go to polygons. We're going to just select some stripes and color those in. The thing is that the stripes are pretty big here. We kind of want them to be smaller. And so that means we have to add more lines in here, more line cuts. And how we can do that is, so you should see this line cut tool over here, which will allow you to just cut one at a time like that. But there's an easier tool for us. If you hold left click and you go down to loop path cut, we can, if you hold shift and you left click, you can just kind of snap it to the middle and create lines like that. And that can be useful for modeling. If you ever feel like you need to, just add lines in anywhere, that's a good one to know. So now we're going to create maybe one here and here. Maybe these two. So there's also a quick selection tool. Instead of, shift selecting all of these, we can go to select, loop selection. It's also right here. And we can just click that and then shift click that. And then we can drag our material onto that selection, and boom. You can see that our material is applied here, and it came with this selection tag. So that selection tag it's telling that red material where it's going. And if we were to click off of here and we click this selection tag and we click select, it just quick selects that for us, which is pretty cool. So now we got a pin. So pretty fast, pretty easy. And we're going to hide this now because we don't need that anymore. And we can duplicate this. So if we go up here and we control drag that, we can rename this to pin 2. And if we move it out, we now have another pin. Nice. And we can duplicate that one and make a third pin, pin 3. And we'll drag that over here. And now we've got our bowling lane set up, ready to go. So let's give it a spin. Boom. Awesome. Let's quickly create some materials for these as well. So we can duplicate this red material, and let's just make it purple. And that will be for the bowling ball. So we can apply that. And let's make a material for the lane. We want it to be wooden. We can actually go to our asset browser here. Oh, I already had it selected. So if you go to materials, you can see that there's all these preset materials. And if you go to wood, there's a lot of wood options. So let's just select this first one and double click that, and it loads over here. And we can just apply that to our lane, and there we go. So let's take a render at that. That's what it looks like, pretty cool. maybe we can make it a little more interesting. Let's go and add a physical sky, and let's see what that looks like. So now we got some more shadows, a little more going on. So that looks good. And for the last step, I'm gonna create an interesting camera movement to kind of follow this bowling ball. So if I click camera, and we zoom out, we can now see there's a camera right where I just had my perspective view. So if we click that, we'll pop back into it, pop back out. Let's center this camera so we can get it back to the middle. So I'll go to coordinates and let's just zero everything out. Now our camera's in the middle here. Let's move it behind the bowling ball and let's rotate it. By the way, instead of clicking all these buttons, you can see you can click E for move, R for rotate, and T for scale. So it's just some shortcuts to quickly get to those. So I will snap by holding shift 90 degrees, and let's see what this looks like. Cool. So while we're in camera view, we can actually move the camera just by moving around in the perspective view here. So if I can just zoom out and drag a bit, and that's what my camera's position will be now. So let's keyframe this position. So frame 0, I will record active objects, and I will go to frame 90. Actually, I'm gonna press play and I'm gonna go right when the bowling ball hits those. So let's do frame 50. We want our camera to be, I'm just gonna zoom forwards. We want our camera to be like this maybe. So we'll keyframe there. Go back to the beginning and let's press play. Nice. So now we've got a pretty cool animation. So I think this is ready to go. Let's give it another render and see how that looks. Cool. I think our pins might be a little too reflective. If we go to our material and we go to reflectance, reflection strength, let's drop that to maybe 30. And let's see what that looks like. Yeah, a little better. Now they're keeping their white a little more. Cool, so that's our scene, it's ready to go. And let's check out our settings. So output, we can leave that the same. We're going to make sure we're on all frames, so it's rendering everything in the scene. We'll go to save. I have my path saved here. PNG selected. I want this to be a PNG image sequence. And these other options we'll ignore for now. There's effects you can add, like global illumination helps add some realism to the scene, but for now we'll just keep it simple. And we'll click render to picture viewer. And now our scene is rendering 2 seconds per frame. So once this image sequence is done, we're going to put this in a video editor and make it a video file, and we'll wait for this to finish and we'll check it out. Our render finished, and you can see in our folder that we have 91 image files. So it's pretty cool. And so we have this, but we want it to be in a video format. So what we can do is there's different video editors that you can use. There's a lot of free ones that work pretty well, and I'm using After Effects. So it's an ancient version of After Effects, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to import my image sequence. I'm going to have PNG sequence checked down here so it opens up all my images. I'll drag that down here, and now if I press play or click space, you can see our rendered video, and it's looking good. So now we want to render this out, create a video file. So what I'll do is I'll go to composition, add to render queue, and now down here it only lets me output as an AVI, but that's okay. I have my location and I will save. You can do other video formats if you get an extension for After Effects called Adobe Media Encoder. And that allows you to do lots of different file extensions. But for now, we'll do this. I'll click render. It's rendered that, woohoo. And we can see our finished video. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and hope you guys learned something new, and stay tuned for more videos coming up.